Hello and welcome to Jump To It for IrishRacing.com and Betting Expert. I'm Shane Anderson, and a lot to get through on today's show as we reflect on that brilliant week of racing we had from Royal Ascot last week. Also on today's show, going to look back on the Prix de Diane, the French Oaks, which was run at Chantilly last Sunday. We also will be looking ahead too to some of the bigger races this weekend, including the Irish Derby at Group 1 level and also the Pretty Polly. And there's also plenty of talk about Cheltenham and whether or not it will be a 5-day festival going forward. Let's welcome in the team, Ed Quigley and also Stephen Harris. Guys, good to catch up. Stephen, plenty of news going around, but I think if we take a moment to reflect on what we saw last week, Royal Ascot really did present an outstanding week of racing.
Yeah, it was brilliant racing show. We started the week on fast ground, and by the end of the week we were on heavy ground, so it posed a real conundrum for punters. Personally, I really enjoyed Oxted winning on the first day. That was the financial highlight, but it was all pretty much downhill after that. So we've got some catching up to do this weekend. Very competitive, typical Saturday, I think. Loads of non-stop action for punters to get stuck into.
And Ed, good to catch up with you. And we will be talking about Cheltenham. I know it's your favourite event, and we are right in the heart of flat season, but Cheltenham's certainly been to the fore as a newsmaker this past week.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll get on to my rant a little bit later in the show, but Royal Ascot was fantastic, wasn't it? I remember Stephen saying he got his dressing gown dry cleaned for the start of the shows early days. Well, I ended up getting my duvet dry cleaned, my whole bedding. I needed about four days of sleep after the meeting was over. It turned to heavy ground, didn't it? On the closing days, and it became really, really hard for punters. Draw biases went up in smoke, and it was more of a kind of national hunt weather, wasn't it? But it was a terrific week. We are talking about Cheltenham. We'll talk about that a bit later. But really did enjoy Royal Ascot. Poetic Flair, that's probably visually the most standout performer for Jim Bolger. But I do think the fact Love came back in one piece and got the job done for Aidan O'Brien. Visually wasn't the most impressive, but I think it's kind of the bigger picture there with that one. She's a brilliant mare, and she's heading to King George next. I think she'll take a lot of beating.
All right, guys, let's get into the news of the week. And we'll start with Royal Ascot, 5 days of brilliant racing. And as we touched on, it was a week that had a fair bit of controversy, I suppose, in many ways, because we had a track starting quite quick. By the end of the week, it was quite deep and slow and heavy. But it certainly produced some fascinating performances. Stephen, let's start with some of the big guns. Probably the big talking point of the week was Stradivarius going into the Gold Cup to try and win the race for the fourth time and win at Royal Ascot for the fifth year in succession. He was well beaten. There was some criticism of Frankie Dettori's ride. What did you make of Frankie's ride? And also, do you think Stradivarius is perhaps now a spent force?
Yeah, I don't think about spent force. I mean, I think my notes on the race would have finished 4 lengths second with a clear run. I mean, I think Dettori gave it an extraordinary ride for a horse. He knows that stays well and has got a terrific turn of foot. He's never been that far back before. I mean, it was a very curious decision to be that far behind. And turning for home, Subjectivist had it won. I mean, I think he was the meritorious winner on the day. I would love to see them both meet at Goodwood. We'll find out whether Stradivarius is gone then. But certainly there's no way in the world Dettori will be sitting 10 lengths out of his ground on this occasion. I mean, if you did take even money about the veteran, I think you'd be aggrieved. But I personally don't think he would have won under almost any circumstances, but he would have got a lot closer. There's no doubt about that. But, I mean, when you watch the race again, we were all watching Stradivarius, weren't we? But the winner won on merits. I mean, he had them absolutely cold kicking for home on the home turn and cruised home. I mean, he's going to be a force to be reckoned with over the coming months.
Yeah, I think Subjectivist is a pretty special horse, Ed, because I know there are some ratings firms, including Timeform, that now have him rated as 130, which puts him into the really true elite staying class and one of the best sayers we've probably seen for many a year. And it was quite interesting, just the after commentary straight out of the race where everyone was focusing on Stradivarius being beaten, yet they've completely, in a way, ignored what was an utterly dominant win.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the nature of the beast, really, isn't it? When you've got a horse like Stradivarius going for history, your inclination, no matter what happens, whoever wins it is to talk about that horse. And so I think you're probably right here, Shane, that not enough focus on how good the winner was. And we're probably trying to talk too much about what Stradivarius did or didn't do. And Subjectivist absolutely pulverised the opposition here, no matter what run Stradivarius got in that race. he was not beating Mark Johnson's representative on that day. Really impressive performance. Still relatively lightly raced, looks to be on an upward curve, and that was really, really dominant. We don't have enough empirical evidence, if you like, to know whether Stradivarius is still the force of old. Really interesting, finally, on Stradivarius with John Gosden, straight after the race, went up to Frankie Dettori and allegedly said, is he still the same Stradivarius? Frankie Dettori just nodded and said yes, which kind of infers to me Frankie perhaps thinks he got the horse in a bit of a muddle, and he thinks he could have given subject to this a real race. We will find out at Goodwood. Listening to the reports last night, sounds like the rematch is on. Really looking forward to that one. That should be an absolute belter.
Yeah, I tend to find myself in the perhaps he's gone type of camp with Stradivarius, because look, he won first up in the Cigaro. It was a nice win, but the form out of that race hasn't really amounted to much. And he was not the Stradivarius of old compared to what we've seen in the Gold Cup. So I'm happy to side with perhaps he's over the top now as a 7-year-old, but he's been a grand warrior regardless. And it would be great for racing if he could come back. Let's talk around some of the key players attached to Stradivarius. And of course, the trainer, John Gosden, of course, now in partnership with his son, Thady. He's come out as the equal top trainer of the week with Andrew Balding. We had, of course, Frankie Dettori, who rides Stradivarius. He ended up with a pretty good week, 4 wins, including Group 1s. Ryan Moore, of course, the champion jockey, normally was beaten by Oisin Murphy this year. But I think those 3 big names in the jockey ranks, and also John and Thady Gosden with Andrew Balding, that was some really great stories coming through with how they had their horses competing throughout the week, Stephen.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point, Shane. I think Aidan O'Brien, for one, will be slightly disappointed after Ascot. Obviously, Love managed to win the St James's Palace in very workmanlike and unimpressive style. He had a lot of 2-year-olds who went for a ball of chalk, were very hard to lay through the week and ran accordingly. And it was only really Point Lonsdale on the final day who stopped the rot and looked a top-class prospect. I would imagine he is the best juvenile so far, in my opinion. That was a really taking display, and the heavy mob were all on 7-4 down to 11-10 by the off. He's an exciting, but certainly Gosden seemed to have the edge. He's got some fantastic horses. Obviously, Palace Pier being the main one who started the meeting off, winning at 7-2 on. He was back to the exclusion of everything else. The only thing I'll say, Shane, I think we all get a bit carried away. The actual performances of Love and Palace Pier was workmanlike at best. I mean, they weren't brutally dominant. They were winning by a length or two, hard ridden to do so. So quite what they go on to do for the rest of the summer remains to be seen.
I'll ask you more about that shortly, Ed, but as Stephen touched on, Palace Pier winning a Queen Anne, Love winning the Prince of Wales' Stakes. We've also got this outstanding 3-year-old Poetic Flair with a dominant win in the St James's Palace Stakes, and of course then Wonderful Tonight winning the Hardwick later on in the week. We could have some really very interesting clashes going forward. I mean, whether we see Palace Pier and Poetic Flair clash in the Sussex, whether we see Love clash with Wonderful Tonight, maybe in an arc later in the season, there could be some really key racing that comes out of this meeting with some of the big name performers.
Absolutely. As I say, it was the bigger picture with those kind of aforementioned stars. I mean, just to get Love back on the track after 10 months off, win a Group 1 with no prep run, I think they'll be absolutely delighted. She'll strip a lot fitter for that and kick on from there. And it sounds like they're going to go to the King George, where you're going to get pole driver and Al Arzi, of course, who clashed at Epsom, and the Derby winner Adayar in there. I mean, that looks an absolutely bonkersly good race, doesn't it? Really looking forward to that one. Palace Pier, again, John Gosden's hinted, it's just Frankie Dettori felt perhaps the ground was a little bit lively enough for him over the mile on that occasion. He says at some point they will go to 10 furlongs. They've kind of penciled in the Juddmonte in August at York. So they're definitely thinking about having a step up in trip with Palace Pier at some point. And again, that would then open up a whole host of different avenues. So as you say, Shane, there's a lot of individuals in here who, in a way, Royal Ascot has almost teed them up for the rest of the season. And I mean, the Arc is the kind of clash we want to see, don't we? With Snowfall, Love, Wonderful Tonight, a few others in there as well. There's some really, really exciting potential clashes in the future. Obviously, just hope they all stay in one piece.
I'm going to put you both under a little bit of pressure here, and Stephen, I'll start with you because you referenced the fact that you felt that Love and also Palace Pier perhaps a little more workmanlike than we were hoping for with their Group 1 successes. Are there horses that you are really looking at from Royal Ascot that you think are bang on target for future season goals? And are there some horses you're willing to put a line through that you don't think will measure up? Have you got that level of analysis yet out of the meeting?
Well, I would be inclined to be against Love, personally. Hard race, could bounce, second run back, 10 months off. she was fully fit. I mean, forget about the heavy mob were on. They did play in very large numbers at a short price, and she won. But she had the run of the race from the front and kept pulling out more. She's got a terrific attitude, but just remains to be seen how easy to place she is this time around. My 3 to take from the meeting, Shane, were Wonderful Tonight, trained by a genius in Menuisier. That was amazing run in the Hardwick. Beating Broom, who was well balanced. If you watch the run back, she didn't settle for 80% of the race. She was still pulling, turning for home. And when she went again, straight past my select, that was a devastating turn of foot. I mean, she's going to be some horse. She might need soft ground. That's the only thing. It remains to be seen if she's as effective on quick ground, which is what she's likely to get for the rest of the summer. The other one, Broom, who finished second there, was backed by the right people. I thought Ryan Moore was very ordinary there. Miles too far, back out of his ground, ran on strongly. That one will be winning a good race this summer, so I like him. And the other one, which is pretty obvious, is Batash, who we were against on the day after the break. I think he'd been off for 9 months, had a well-documented fracture injury. I thought Jim Crowley did too much too soon there. He didn't try and lead initially, which probably would have been a better plan, but he made up 3 lengths in about 100 yards to almost hit the front, or did hit the front, and then I thought that was a good comeback from Batash, up on the strong pace. We'll see that one in a different light back at Goodwood, a track that suits him much better than Ascot.
So you've given us 3 there. Wonderful Tonight, Broom, the first and second from the Hardwick, and also Batash, the champion sprinter, who hopefully will progress. Are there any that you don't want to be with out of this meeting going forward?
Well, I think I will oppose Love, Shane, because I think she's bound to be underpriced next time. She's now got form figures 111-1, owned and trained by a genius. She won't be any value next time. People are going to think, oh, she wasn't fit. Well, I think she was pretty much ready for that, to be honest. She'll have to prove that she can win a different way again from off the pace. Obviously, she's done that before. She's top class mare, lovely horse, but I think she's going to be a short price next time out wherever she turns up, and I'll probably lean against her, to be honest.
All right, 3 ticks and a cross there from Stephen. What about you, Ed?
Yeah, interesting. I'd be against Stephen with Love. I mean, it sounds like she's going to the King George. They priced it up as 5-2 joint favourites. The Derby winner Adayar and Love. I think Adayar might not see which way she goes, to be honest with you. I thought Adam Kirby gave that horse a wonderful ride to win the Derby, which was on very soft ground.
Definitely.
I think obviously he gets the 3-year-old allowance, which has to be taken into account. But I think Love stepping back up to 1.5 miles, I think will be another positive from that comeback run. And I just think, even if she was 95%, she's got to improve from having 10 months off a race course, personally. But anyway, we shall see. Others of interest in there. Funny enough, the one I thought when Wonderful Tonight produced a brilliant performance, David Minutier has said the arc will be the kind of main plan. They just hope it absolutely lashes it down for the meeting, because soft ground is imperative. I thought Hookham ran an absolute corker in absolutely bottomless ground. The horse travelled really well for a long way just before emptying. Be really interested in him still over 1.5 miles on some decent ground. There's definitely a big prize to be picked. They might even go abroad with that horse. I think it has to be said. There's definitely a big race in the locker there. And earlier on in the week, Godolphin had a nice win over Kamari, who really strode clear in the season. They're talking about potentially, Melbourne Cups with him at some point, it has to be said, which I know you'd enjoy there, Shane. So, yeah, lots to take from it. I do totally agree with Stephen on Batash. In being unplaced in the King's Stand, I'm absolutely delighted with the performance for going forward, because I thought for 85-90% of that race, he looked like the old Batash. I think whether Jim Crowley could have done a lot about it is open to debate. I think the horse just tanked himself to the front with the kind of exuberance of a horse who'd been off the track for the best part of a year. And the old fires definitely still burn there. It was only in the last furlong he just looked like a horse who just needed the run, I thought. So Goodwood horse has an unbelievable record there. I think, it's encouraging to see as regards to Batash goes to Goodwood, and I think he will take all the beating there.
Before we move on from Royal Ascot, I'll ask you then both about the sprint division, because you've both referenced there Batash. We had Oxted, who Stephen's a big supporter of, winning earlier in the week in the King's Stand Stakes. Of course, in Dream of Dreams, a well-established sprinter coming out on top in the Diamond Jubilee. Then we've got this emerging crop of 3-year-olds. Campanelle, this outstanding American filly, getting up and winning the Commonwealth Cup narrowly from Dragon's Symbol. And then, of course, the big talking point, Rohan, who was a breathtaking winner of the Wokingham because he was a gelding. He couldn't get a start in the Group 1 sprint race. I mean, those 3 potentially could be the ones that we side with as we go on to some of the biggest sprint races throughout the season, and we see more of a clash between the older sprinters and the new generation. Stephen, I'll start from your perspective. Do you want to be with the olders or the emerging youngsters?
Well, I can see Rohan. I mean, I remember winning. I think it was a mark of 55 earlier in the season. I think they had a bit in hand that day, but this was a devastating. It was a really good ride, I think, wasn't it? Shane Kelly, his first ever Royal Ascot winner, coming from virtually last to first. That was an impressive performance. Dream of Dreams did rescue the punters on the Saturday. Revels in soft ground. That one very well suited by conditions. I rather doubt that he will have much of an impact on fast ground over the next few months. I think that might be his gold cup, as it were. Ed said about Batash, I totally agree about that. Goodwood, they won't see Batash. It'll be 11 or 10 on, make all the running, 4 lengths clear at halfway, and come home on the bridle. I mean, instead, I think had the perfect makeup. It was more about makeup off a complete pace collapse. Oxted, who was ridden along 6 or 7 lengths behind halfway, flew home and picked up the pieces. So I think probably Batash is the one to be with, Shane, but fascinating to see which way Rohan goes.
Okay, Ed, you mentioned Batash as well. You think he'll keep improving throughout the season. But based on that same question I asked Stephen, do you think that the 3-year-olds could really offer a significant threat to the older sprinters?
Not totally convinced by them. It's also, excuse me, easy to sit on the fence because we had the meeting start on fast ground and end on heavy ground. So how quite these kind of tangible form lines amount to, I'm not too sure, it has to be said. In regards to Dream of Dreams, Glen Shiel and Art Power, it was all the mudlarks coming to the fore, wasn't it, in the Jubilee, it has to be said. Oxted, very quickly again, well done, obviously, Stephen tipped that one up. Really fascinating listening to Connections saying, obviously, he went over to Saudi Arabia and that journey just allegedly just knocked him for absolute 6 and it's taken them a while to get him back. They thought strongly run 5 would really suit him. Interesting where they go with him now. I don't think 5 at Goodwood would really be his bag. They're probably going to have to come back up to 6 at some stage. But all in all, I think that was a terrific training performance to get that horse back in the winner's enclosure. At least it has now opened up another avenue. Maybe on a stiff 5 furlongs, they may roll the dice over that trip again because he has habitually been a 6 furlong performer. So a muddling division, the sprint division, if you like, Shane. I don't really know. Kind of the evidence from the Jubilee was on heavy ground. Some of the youngsters want quicker ground. Where they all quite meet, I'm not really sure yet.
All right, and the last point I'll talk about Royal Ascot with you both is around what happened with Rohan. He's a gelding, so he wasn't permitted to run in the Commonwealth Cup, which is basically for colts, so entires or fillies. I find it baffling that Europe, particularly in this day and age, still sticks to what is a very traditional way of thinking when it comes to some of these Group 1 races. I know in Australia, geldings are permitted to run in Group 1 races from 2 years onwards, and in some other jurisdictions around the world, they also allow it, which often creates high-class fields, better betting races for the punters. Do you guys have a strong opinion on this? Should geldings be allowed to be in all Group 1 races in Europe?
I suppose this must have something to do with breeding, Shane, has it? That there's an archaic sort of rule to encourage the sort of thoroughbred progression and breeding lines and all the rest of it. But I do agree with you. It does seem archaic. And when you get a horse from a small stable, that's the thing. This isn't one of those horses that cost 500 grand and it's been the owner 20 of them every year. This is probably a dream for a small owner from a trainer, Dave Evans, who's having a terrific season. With his horses and landing gamble after gamble, by the way, and this one certainly did land a punt earlier in the season. So I agree with you. It would be nice if Rohan, in this instance, could compete, but I'm sure the powers that be probably think they know best with these sort of archaic rules that govern the sport.
Ed, what about you? Do you agree? Should we see a change in ruling there?
Good question, Shane. Straightforward answer is I don't really know. Probably need time to think about it. But I understand the reasons why the rules are in place at the moment. As we say, it's for the breeding purposes. It's for the pattern. It's for the kind of thoroughbred progression. But at the end of the day, you've got a 118 rated horse. You want to see your best horses in the best races would be my kind of argument, really. And this is some unbelievable story, the kind of rags to riches story, isn't it, of this horse? But we've had a few instances of this recently, haven't we? About 3 years ago, it was the Andrew Balding gelding that won the Derby trial. If you know what I'm saying, he couldn't run in the Derby. He was just like, well, it was a good race. It was a decent prize money. And he was eligible to run in the trial, but he wasn't eligible to run in the actual Derby. Makes no sense. There are, like anything, there are a few issues that need kind of cleaning up, but always seem to just get swept under the carpet until we have the same conversation again this time next year. But yeah, a good question, Shane, and a straightforward answer. It's one that needs careful consideration because I can definitely see the arguments for both.
I used to always laugh when the best French horse, Cirrus de Zargle, could never run in the Arc de Triomphe because he was a gelding. France's best race never had their best horse in it. Anyway, just for the benefit of the doubt, the two horses I think I want to follow out of Royal Ascot are 2-year-olds. Berkshire Shadow, who won the Coventry, I think he's a genuine star, and Point Lonsdale, who won the Chesham on the final day. I legitimately think he is a very, very good horse who will progress into something special as a 3-year-old. Let's talk about Joan of Arc winning the Prix de Diane, the Group 1 French Oaks. Stephen, at Chantilly on Sunday. Aidan O'Brien's now won all of the classics available to him in Europe at Group 1 level. She's a really nice filly, but I'm not sure overall there's a great deal of depth in this race because to my eye, tactics were messed up by quite a few jockeys. They let the winner get away with an on-speed run and she was too good.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those typical French race, Shane. I mean, can't be bothered to add up all the little distances, but it looks to me like 3 lengths covering the first 11, which wouldn't be unusual in France. They tend to crawl. They tend to all try and win like Dancing Brave in the Arc, coming from miles behind out wide in a dash, and most of them don't manage to do it. This chap who was riding, he's Aidan O'Brien's obviously a star, Mendizabel. He's got a very, very good strike rate, and he was perfectly positioned on Joan of Arc. I mean, she does deserve credit. She's had 6 runs now, winning 3 of them. This was the first time outside of Ireland. So to go over there and win such a valuable race, first time away from home territory, was a really good effort. And there should be loads more to come. She's in the Eclipse, actually, just looking at the declarations. Whether or not that's where they go is debatable. He's probably got 2 or 3 others lined up for that. But that really would be a fascinating race to run her in. I think she'll definitely stay further as well. She's now proven at a mile 2, but I should think she'll get a mile 4, no bother. So she's one to follow. What the form amounts to, Shane, is probably not all that much in absolute truth.
Ed, I know you don't have a strong opinion on the race, but regarding Aidan O'Brien, yes, he's got the advantage of getting the best horses from the Coolmore breeding operation and making, the Coolmore go and buy the best that they can from other sales around the world where they're not offering necessarily their own stock. So he does have that advantage of great progeny of horses going into his stable. But the results are he still gets the Group 1s when they matter year in, year out. It is quite an amazing achievement what he's been able to do, being at the helm of Coolmore and Ballydor for 25 years or so.
Yeah, absolutely. There's not many walks of life, be it, business, sport, anything, where someone can stay at such a high level for so long. You don't see it that often. I mean, his success is remarkable. Yes, he's clearly got the ammunition and the raw tools to do it. Excuse me, but it's just remarkable, isn't it? The amount of numbers, the amount of records, and I said he's had a few kind of forgotten horses in a way, a bit like Joan of Arc and St Mark's Basilica's been mopping up Group 1s, and it wouldn't exactly be the first horses jumping off the page for you when you looked at his kind of pre-season squad list a couple of months ago. So yeah, remarkable trainer. Been at the peak of his powers for a long time, and listening to his kind of interviews and his drive and determination, I don't think the old towel is going to be getting thrown in any time within the next decade or so. He's absolutely loving it, and remarkable trainer.
All right, I've done my best to prolong this talk of Cheltenham for as long as I can, but I think we need to now focus on one of the great racing events, of course, Ed's major event that he loves to talk about all the time, and that is the Cheltenham Festival. There is a strong push emerging through the BHA and the Jockey Club, Stephen, that we will extend it from its current 4-day schedule through to 5 days, which would mean the addition of a few races. Are you a supporter of a 5-day Cheltenham Festival, or is it a 1 day too many?
Well, I mean, the first thing to say, Shane, is that whatever the question in racing, the answer is always more racing. That, with the prize money's falling off a cliff, we'll have some more racing. We'll just put some more on and spread it even thinner. We're losing horses in training as falling off a cliff. Oh, never mind, we'll have more racing. That seems to be the answer. Now, obviously, Cheltenham is a terrific money generator for the Jockey Club. And by the way, it's their decision, not the BHA. The BHA have got about as much control over the fixture list as I have. I mean, it makes no difference at all. The courses are in charge, and the Jockey Club, in this instance, make millions of pounds for Cheltenham Festival, and so they increase it by 20%, and we'll just make more money. I suspect what would happen is that the crowds wouldn't be so big over the 5 days. It would just mean that people went 1 day or 2 days less. Certainly, what used to happen back in the good old days, Shane, that you can remember and I can a bit, is that there used to be a 3-day Cheltenham Festival, and the 3 days, people used to take 3 days off work, save up, and go all 3 days. And it was a punting extravaganza, far too much Guinness, too many bets, and you recover for the next sort of 11 months to do the same thing again. But I think it's got diluted quality-wise by 4. There's definitely 3 or 4 races we could well do without, of very little interest to anyone, bar the Willie Mullins, who wins them every year, the Mayor's Race being the prime example. And I mean, to have another day, all right, it's only 2 more races, but they'll just end up doing what we saw at Ascot this year. You spread the races out, they end up being about 45 minutes apart. You end up going home about 4:30. I just think it's overkill, and it's pure greed, absolute greed on the jockey club's part. It's a disastrous idea. It's very unpopular with everybody in racing, even including people like Paul Nicholls, who's likely to profit from having a couple more uncompetitive races on the card. So no, it's a no from me, Shane.
All right, a big no from Stephen, who also had the ability to put in a dig to me for being old, subtly, no doubt. But Ed, look, I'm really keen to also get your views on this, because you are a passionate supporter of the Cheltenham Festival. You're a passionate supporter of National Hunt Jumps Racing. 5 days, good or bad?
I'm happy with 4. I'm not against 5, would be the bottom line. I think there's a lot of layers to this debate, and I mean, Stephen made some excellent points here. And I don't think everything gets spoken about in absolute terms at the moment. It's either a jockey's brilliant or a jockey's rubbish, or 5 days is a disaster and 4 days is brilliant. I think there's a lot of middle ground which gets struck and which often doesn't get debated. And so essentially what I'm saying to you is I think 5 days could work. It is only the extra 2 races, really, when you break it down, look at the facts. One of them, you're probably going to bring the novice handicap chase back from 2 years ago, which was there anyway, and then you're going to stick on another race. I'd like to see something like a veterans chase or something. It's pointless to me, a load of 11-year-olds turning up at the festival every year at 66-1, finishing 8th, and everyone kind of gives them a clap out. I think Croco Bay, Moscow Flyer, perhaps they're the only 11-year-olds and upwards winners in the last 40 years at the festival. There'll probably be someone out there to defy the stats. But what I'm saying is, I think there's a race you could add to the meeting which would enhance it. What I would not want to see at all, it would be unforgiving if they added something like a 2.5-mile Ryanair hurdle, which would be absolutely shooting yourself in the foot. In a way, that really would dilute the quality. So I think from the race planning side of things, with 5 days of 6 races apiece, 1 extra race like for veterans, to bring back some of these lovable horses for a last hurrah, that would work. I'd be happy with that. The problem once you go to 5, from a racing point of view, this is natural progression is then got to get to 6. I mean, I'm surprised it's taken this long for 5 to come along, in all honesty. And I think within 20 years, Cheltenham will be a 7-day kind of race meeting for you Craig David fans out there. So I just think there's it's the nature of the beast. Cheltenham is a juggernaut, and that then leads on to the economic argument and the financial for the stakeholders. Look, I mean, Cheltenham itself accounts for nearly 30% of the turnover, just that festival, for the Jockey Club for the entire year, just in those 4 days as they stand. From a business point of view, it is an economic no-brainer to expand your best financial asset. I mean, it actually makes no sense to try and restrict it. Where the danger comes, like all things in life, is in the pursuit of economic gain. The balance has got to be very carefully tread between that and then diminishing the gravitas and the grandeur of the product it is you're trying to sell. And whenever it then gets and the balance tips too far the other way, people will start to lose interest. So that's my worry. Once it goes to 5, the natural progression is it then goes to 6. And then I do think you really are on a bit of a leaking boat there, because I can't see how you can pad Cheltenham out any more than 5 days in the format suggested. Going back to the kind of popularity of it, yes, there's a lot of trainers moaning, a lot of jockeys moaning, and I understand why in a way, but I personally feel it's a little bit hypocritical. I guarantee you, if this goes ahead and 2023, there'll be 50,000 plus fans there at Cheltenham on a Saturday. Betting turnover will be through the roof. Everyone who's moaning about it will be betting on it. All these trainers and owners who are moaning about it will all have their horses entered. They'll be absolutely delighted to be in the winners' enclosure, taking the Jeroboams of Champagne when they win. And I just cannot stand, I'm sick to death of all this negativity about everything in the whole time. I personally think Cheltenham is an absolute juggernaut. You're never going to defeat it. If you try to, you might as well go and take up, NASCAR or learn bridge or something. Cheltenham in itself is an absolute juggernaut. It's only going to get bigger and better. My final point, part 3 on this kind of debate, to try and cram in, is where a lot of people make the argument Cheltenham is detrimental to the rest of the Cheltenham season. I think there are a couple of issues I'm going to very quickly touch upon where I think that is totally true, but I think a lot of it is baseless claims. And I would, instead of fighting against Cheltenham, I would use Cheltenham as your magnet for the rest of the season. I think I would come about this a totally different way. I would spin some positivity into it. I think you could really propel the rest of the season cheaply and effectively in order to enhance it and keep Cheltenham happy. For example, one area I do think there are big problems is with the 2 mile, the novice chase divisions and the 2 mile divisions, where you have 3 runner races on the Saturday for a grade 1. You have a 2 runner novice chase at Exeter on a Monday. That does nobody any good. I would bring in some form of like qualification criteria, a bit like the Per Temps final, where so for example, you've got the Schlur Chase, the Tingle Creek, the Desert Orchid, the Game Spirit. Bring in a qualification criteria that you've got to have run at least 4 of those and finished in the top 3, or you've got to have won at least 2 of them, whatever the qualification criteria. That's pedantic at this point. It's a bit like, Olympic qualifying criteria. That way, you're forcing all these superstars to meet during the season. So the race courses during the season are happy. Everyone on telly's happy. You're trying to sell the sport to the public for every month of the year outside of the 4 days of Cheltenham. They're all happy. And in turn, by qualifying for Cheltenham, they then end up at the meeting they're all designed they want to be at anyway. I think there's little things like that could be done. It would cost absolutely nothing to do. But I was having this debate on Sky Sports Racing with Gina Bryce back in 2013. I basically got told to shut up, we have seen the same arguments year after year. Nothing gets done, and all people do is moan about Cheltenham. I would say admit Cheltenham is the be-all and end-all for a lot of people, and it is, and you won't ever defeat that. So I think you've got to accept that and look at how can you enhance the rest of the season. I think so much could be done. I bring in a rookie trainer title, for example, for the first a trainer who's had in their first 2 seasons. Maybe bring in like a rookie trainer cup. I think so many things you could. A lot of the trainers up north say they feel they've been totally left out of it. Bring in some kind of Northern Champion Series. It just enhance the rest of the season rather than moaning about it and not doing anything. So in answer to your question, yeah, I'm happy with 4. I think if 5 days is done properly, I think it will work, and it will be a huge money spinner, which we shouldn't kind of diminish in this day and age with what's happened financially within the world of racing. It's where it goes beyond that, and if they make a mess of it, my concern. So anyway, rant over. Back to you, Shane.
It was a good rant, but a couple of things I'll just add to that before we move on. One, I don't think 5 days is truly a bad thing. If they look and take note of successes that have been around events like this. So Royal Ascot has actually got better with 5 days. The Melbourne Cup Carnival in Australia, 4 days in the space of 7 days, so not back to back, but the event is the backbone of a broader 3-month racing activity through a spring carnival. You see great events in other parts of the world that do a similar approach. So I think if they get the model right, they program it right, they don't create faux new group or grade 1 races just for the sake of it, but it's all about trying to get the best horses to compete. If they don't ignore the opportunity of creating good handicap races, so that drives good wagering, because handicap races tend to be the best bet races there are. If they think about the structure, and they do take advantage of the investment that goes into infrastructure at Cheltenham to get more returns for the sport, that will be a positive. The other great thing about Cheltenham, it is one of the true racing events that still has mainstream exposure. There are very few of them that will get the true exposure, where the Grand National and Cheltenham are the 2 for National Hunt, and of course Royal Ascot certainly for UK flat racing. But you've got to take advantage of that. You've got to use that to leverage more people to follow the sport. If they can do that well, it will be a success. Anyway, we'll leave that there. It's now time to focus on the upcoming races of the week. Guys, we're going to spend a bit of time focusing on some great racing coming up in Ireland this weekend. Of course, we've got the Group 1 Irish Derby on Saturday at the Curragh, and the final field has now been assembled with 11 to face a starter. Arturo Toscanini is an outsider for Aidan O'Brien. Earlswood for Johnny Murta, Fernando Vici for Donica O'Brien. High Definition, the ruling favourite, 2-1 for Aidan O'Brien. Probably Ryan Moore to take the ride. Hurricane Lane coming through the Derby for Godolphin and William Buick. Lone Eagle, McSwinney, already a multiple Group 1 winner. Matchless, Mojo Star runner-up in the Derby, Van Gogh and Wordsworth. I think it's a fascinating contest. All the big guns seem to be there, Stephen, outside of the Derby winner, but it was well made newsworthy that he was going to the King George. But I think it's a really good race.
Yeah, I think we're going to disagree here, Shane, because I've had a secret insight into you and Ed's tip for this race. High Definition is a very, very short price favourite for me. before he ran at York, obviously he's supposed to be the next coming, the best one in the yard, the superstar. But my message was that he wouldn't go past his galloping companion at home. So whether that's true or not, it could be a load of rubbish. But that was what I was told, and he certainly did before at York and looked very laboured. He was under pressure a long way out. Now, all the sectional times wizards who used their clocks rather than their eyes thought this was an amazing run, and he finished faster than everything and all the rest of it. I don't really subscribe to that. I thought it was a laboured effort, and he looked a bit recalcitrant. The winner, who I actually prefer for this race at the price, is Hurricane Lane, was under pressure even further out than High Definition at York, but picked up strongly, ran on well to assert. Now, I think you need to overlook Hurricane Lane's run at Epsom. Dick reported afterwards that he was at ease on the track, and he certainly had a wide trip while the winner came up the inside. I think Hurricane Lane is very much a relentless galloper. I'm hoping that he'll be very, very positive at the Curragh and sit first or second and kick on a long way out. Now, matters might be complicated because Aidan O'Brien's got 90% of the field, so I should think they might be trying to make it a proper burn-up up front for more to come through late is probably the plan. But I think if Hurricane Lane can sit very handy, boot on the home turn, he'll take a lot of dislodging. I think he's a very good each-way bet, about 5-1. There's not that many guaranteed stayers in the race. He's definitely going to stay. I think he'll give his running. And there should be loads more improvement to come. He's only had a handful of runs, so he's the one for me at 5-1.
Good push for Hurricane Lane. All right, Ed, you in the High Definition camp?
Yeah, I am. I mean, I actually think I don't think this is a particularly great race. I think there's a load of non-stayers in here. I can't see McSweeney getting home. There's a few others, a load of pacemakers who are aren't good enough. It looks to me, Mojo Star, I think, was perhaps a little bit flattered in the Derby. That's my view. Look, I think Hurricane Lane and High Definition would be the two I would go with here. I think Hurricane Lane back on a more conventional track, we'll see a better performance. But High Definition, let's not forget, in that York run, High Definition had a little hold up, and Hurricane Lane did have the fitness edge and already had the run under his belt before that meeting at York. And that was over a mile and a quarter, and High Definition, for whatever you say about what the clock said, he was doing his best work in the closing stages. And I think with that run under his belt up to a mile and a half, I generally think it's between the top two. And I just think High Definition will turn the tables on Hurricane Lane from York Run with that fitness edge and a bit of extra time. And I think this track will suit as well. So, yeah, High Definition for me. But I think this is generally a race with a lot of depth in it, in truth.
All right, I like it, and I think High Definition will come out on top, so I'm siding with you there, although I think it might be a little bit stronger than what you were anticipating. But anyway, hopefully it's a great race for the Group 1 on Saturday. There's also Group 1 racing on Sunday at the Curragh, and that is led by the Pretty Polly, which is a really good race for the fillies and mares. Cayenne Pepper is at 11-4 for Jessica Harrington. Epona Plays at 7-2. Insinuendo at 12-1. Silence Please is in the field. Thundering Knights well in the market. They're currently 4-1. Divinely's at 14-1. Empress Josephine with some good strong form around her if she runs. 12-1. My Generation. Udanata, pretty gorgeous. Santa Barbara, who will be one of the favoured runners. Sense of Style and Shale is the other ones in the nominations. Of course, the final fields for the Pretty Polly won't come out until Friday morning. All right, Stephen, do you have a view on this race at this stage?
Not a strong one. So I think the most interesting runner is Thunderings of Joseph O'Brien, who went over to Belmont 3 weeks ago and ran an absolute scream. And previously had finished second behind Empress Josephine, which is pretty strong form. Loads more improvements to come. The only thing I'll say, if that one runs, I'd be very worried 23 days on from being over to America, whether the edge had been taken off her. So it's a race to watch. You'll learn plenty from the future. I hope this race doesn't cut up. It could well do. We've just seen the report from the Curragh. They've had 5 millimetres of rain yesterday. They're monitoring watering. It's good to firm at the moment, good in places, I think. You could easily get a small field here if it is genuine fast ground. They might not risk some of these fillies on the ground.
Okay, good insight there around ground conditions. Do you have a view on this race, Ed?
Well, it's his last chance saloon for Santa Barbara, isn't it? I've been against her every run this season, and it's proven profitable. You know, at the end of the day, the facts are she's a maiden winner. She's been sent off favourite, unplaced in the Guineas, sent off favourite, unplaced in the Oaks. 10 furlongs are now saying here's her trip. I'll be really interested here. I'm going to see how this race cuts up and what the prices are, but she just seems to be overbet and overblown. You know, all the stopwatch celebrities are all doing star jumps around their herbal tea on the basis of what she did at the Curragh 9 months ago. I'm a little bit baffled, to be honest with you. I thought there were no excuses at Epsom. You could have made excuses at Newmarket about the track or whatever, but she seems to be very much an excuse-laden filly with a massive reputation. So price dependent, of course, but I might be looking to take her on again here, because if she gets beat over 10 furlongs here, I don't really know where they go with her or what they do with her, in truth. So generally speaking, I'm going to keep my eyes on this, but if she goes kind of 6-4 shorter and the race cuts up, I'll probably be looking to get her turned over again.
All right, I'm with you there. I think from my perspective, KM Pepper might be the one to side with. And the other sort of feature race that we'll touch on is the Curragh Cup, which is also run on Sunday. Again, we haven't got final fields as we scroll through, but we can see that Joseph O'Brien's got plenty of runners. Cormorant Dawn Patrol, Master of Reality, Pondus, they're all likely to make their way to Australia for the Melbourne Cup later in the year. Luke Comer's got a couple of nominations for the race. And then, of course, Aidan O'Brien with Santiago. Also, Tiger Moth is in the race. Chart, who's been flatly disappointing to my eye, but he's good enough to turn his form around. Search for a Song, Dermot Weld, certainly with Search for a Song, that mare in good order going into the race, and True Self's another one to sort of keep an eye on. But again, we'll have that final field come together on Friday. Do you have a view on the Curragh Cup at this stage, Stephen?
No, I thought it was impossible, Shane. It's Aidan O'Brien's got most of them and Joseph's got the rest of them. Dawn Patrol's a horse I really like, ran really well over staying trips last season, finishing up at Ascot when probably had one run too many. But whether or not that one would be quick enough for 1 mile 6 in this sort of ground, on firm ground, has to be doubtful. But that would be my token selection, but it wouldn't be a betting race for me, certainly not at this stage.
All right, what about you, Ed?
Nothing at this stage. However, I mean, they say loyalty can be dangerous, don't they? But Santiago was my tip for the Ascot Gold Cup. But having watched that race back again, all the talk was about Stradivarius not getting a run. Crikey. Santiago went for 3 gaps, got blocked off on all 3 occasions. Look, wouldn't have got anywhere near subjectivist, but any hopes of kind of staying on into third got absolutely crushed into oblivion. Really interesting if they did let this horse take his chance here. The only time he's ran at the track, he won the Irish Derby, funnily enough. And after having no luck in running at Ascot last week, was kind of saved, I thought, up the home straight. So interesting if they let that horse take his turn. It was interesting watching the race back again. With the benefit of hindsight, the horse got more bumps in running than perhaps I actually realised. And so, Santiago said he's a previous Group 1 winner, bolted up in the Irish Derby on this card a year ago. Would be interested at price. But again, who actually lines up in this seems to be a fair element of guesswork at this stage.
Of course, we've got great racing in the UK as well, with races like the Northumberland Plate at Newcastle, and also some good racing coming up at Newmarket. All right, guys, it's now time for Tips of the Week. And we'll start with you, Stephen. You've got a couple of good selections. I think 3 selections, in fact, coming up for this weekend. But I've got to give you a massive pat on the back. The last time we had the scoreboard leading into Royal Ascot, you had a phenomenal weekend with a 48-unit profit. You're now 72.5 units ahead since we've started Jump to It. And you've got 3 good selections at nice prices for us this weekend.
Yeah, it's very kind of our moderator to not slip the Royal Ascot marks in here, Shane, isn't it? That's done us all a favour, I think. But 3 this weekend. Hurricane Lane, who I've touched on at the Curragh, 5-1. I think that's a really good each-way bet. Should go really close. I like that one, as we've touched on. The 2, my betting expert value angles in the 145 at Newcastle. A Tim Easterby sprinter, Danzan, 14-1 at the moment. 2 really good runs. At Doncaster and York, and then disappointing at Hamilton. If you watch that run back, didn't really break and never got involved for his lady rider. We've got Hannigan's in the saddle, blinkers on, onto the order. If you look back at Danzan, has run at Newcastle a couple of times on this surface, and has run well at 50-1 in a race he had no chance when he formed. So I don't think the surface will be any problem. I think Danzan's bound to run well and is overpriced. And my betting expert Naps in the 220 at Newcastle. Another old warrior, Shane, like yourself, Brando of Kevin Ryan. Now he's run
relentless.
I think he's run. I know it is. He's run over 40 times in his career. He's only run once on the all-weather, looking back through his form, and that came in this race in 2020 at Newcastle. And he ran an absolute blinder to finish second behind Judicial. And I watched that run this morning, and he fluffed the brake and was soon in a poor position out the back and ran on really strongly. So although you think of him as a top handicapper, sort of Group 3 sort of horse on fast or good ground turf, He's actually run once on the all-weather in his whole career in this race, and it was a brilliant run. So why they've not run on the all-weather more is questionable. I suppose there aren't that many races for a horse of his quality, but he's around 12 or 14 to 1. I think that's miles too big. I'm actually hoping that Tom Eaves guns him from the stalls and makes the running, because I think that's what he does best. You have to overlook a poor run at York last time, but as we've said on this programme before, Shane, one bad run at York, you can easily ignore that. It's a track where sometimes they blow out altogether, and the ground was loose behind Starman. So I'm confident Brando will give us a good run for our money.
All right, so Danzen, Brando, and also you gave us a good push for Hurricane Lane, and I might have to tap into your winning profit to help my pension fund, because as you keep saying or suggesting, I'm clearly edging closer to retirement, being a wily old customer that I am. Ed, let's have a look at your selections for this weekend, because I'm cutting Stephen off so he doesn't throw any more abuse in my direction. And good to see that from the last time we were keeping count for you, we had you getting a good weekend with 11 units in profit. You're currently sitting at 19.5 units ahead of schedule, and you've got 3 selections for us this weekend. We should note that 2 of them we yet to get official markets coming through.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're ticking over nicely at the moment. I'm with High Definition as the main selection for the weekend. A very, very trappy weekend of racing, but High Definition, unbeaten as a 2-year-old, both wins coming at the Curragh. As I said, we said earlier on the show, I think we'll strip a lot fitter for the outing at York, where he's staying on in the closing stages, up to 1.5 miles, back at the Curragh. I think he gets the job done. And then, outside of that, because I'm finding the flat very trappy and tricky, I'm going back over jumps in the depths of the summer with a couple here have been in my tracker. Clemento, very interesting Fergal O'Brien team up at Cartmel on Friday. The horse has really lost his way, but as a consequence runs off a career low mark. And we talk about tracks which have idiosyncrasies. Perhaps you'd say Epsom and Cheltenham and maybe Sandowns like Chase Tracker, horses for courses. Well, Cartmel will be right up there. It's absolutely, if you ever go, absolutely bonkers kind of layout. You don't really know which way to look half the time. But it really suits horses. You see it year after year. Amazing previous course form. They come back and do it year on, year out. And this horse, I said, has lost the plot recently, has won twice in his career over hurdles. Both wins have come at Cartmel. So I do like the horses for courses angle, Clemento. I've done the tissue for the race. There's no official prices. I've chalked him up at around the 6-7 to 1 mark. So somewhere around there, I think it's a fair play. So Best of All was a horse who was in this column a few weeks ago, who just got pipped in the, funny enough, at Cartmel in the final 50 yards, where he stepped up 3 miles for the first time. They hit the front far too soon with him. He needs to be delivered late. I think they're riding more restraint this time here, and he can go well at Utoxter. I've got him at around 11 to 4, 3 to 1 pope. So, 3 for the weekend. Again, good luck if you're playing on the flat. I think it's incredibly, incredibly difficult.
All right, thanks for that. And I'll just have a look at my selections for the week. And before I go any further, I just want to put in a complaint to our producer, Hans, who clearly has overruled me here by not including my sensational Royal Ascot week. I was well ahead for Royal Ascot. And if we included my plus 10.35 unit profit, I'd actually be in profit here. But Hans has, he's pushed me aside and said, we're not doing that. We're just treating you as a loser at this stage. So I'm going for Logician to turn things around. I'm giving him one last chance in the Fred Archer. He's currently at around 9 to 4. 4 units to win for him. I thought he was actually going to be a live chance in the hard week, but he was a scratching on race eve. I think if he runs to his best, he's the horse to beat. And I'm very much in the camp of High Definition in the Irish Derby, currently at around 6 to 4. So I'll have 6 units on him and hopefully get back into profit now that it's been overruled that I can't have my Royal Ascot winnings in there. Hey, got to give a big shout out to Vincent Finnegan from irishracing.com. He was in red hot form throughout Royal Ascot. I think his overall figure was 30.25 units ahead for the week, considering it's one of the toughest weeks of flat racing. An outstanding achievement. Keep up the great work, Vincent. Guys, just get your thoughts on what to look forward to over the next week or so. Stephen, I'll start with you. What's the one thing you're most keen to see?
Well, hopefully Brando rolling back the years at Newcastle. It's a really good Northumberland Plate Day. It's virtually the only day they get a huge crowd for an all-weather meeting in the and it's very competitive, top class, probably the best sprint this that has been staged on the all-weather at 220. I'm just hoping Brando can be positively ridden and make all the running, show his pace that he shows on the turf on the all-weather surfaces. Good
stuff. Good luck to you. And Ed, what about you? What are you looking forward to the most this weekend?
Well, we got Germany knocking England out on penalties coming up on Tuesday, haven't we? So that'd be the next rant. But other than that, I'm really looking forward to the Curragh. The Irish Derby card is always good fun. Really looking forward to that. I think High Definition could show his class. And other than that, keeping it relatively low key actually this week, Shane. I just think it is very, very trappy. Obviously, if you've got some convincing arguments like Stephen has, then get involved. But I just find it looks one of the hardest weekends of racing for angles in for some time. So yeah, small play on the National Hunt cards. Really looking forward to the Curragh, but generally sitting tight, powder dry until we go again the week after.
Good stuff. Good luck to you too, Ed. There we have it. Stephen Harris and Ed Quigley here with their thoughts on plenty of racing issues and also tips of the week. It's all brought to you by irishracing.com. Vincent and the team do a fantastic job. Head to irishracing.com for the latest form, betting cards, betting information, tips and great news. It's a fantastic site. And of course, bettingexpert.com where you get Stephen Harris's daily tips for UK racing, his best bet or his nap, as well as his value runner. And we do say it quite often, but he has been in fantastic form for a long period of time. Let's hope it continues. Hope you've enjoyed today's edition of Jump to It. We'll see you next week.